The Fourth Way by Peter Ouspensky. And this is a continuation of Chapter 1. Question. If we can do nothing with ourselves as man 1, 2, or 3, must we call in some outside agency if we want to be aware? Answer. There are no outside agencies we can call in because we are mechanical. We can do nothing, but there are differences in doing and self-observation which will show them. For instance, we can show some resistance. We may have some wish, some tendency, but we can show resistance to it, and we can go on resisting every day. In quite small ways, we have a choice. So, although we cannot do, in quotation marks, there are many small things we can do now. For instance, we can try to be aware of ourselves. Certainly, we cannot do it for a long time. But do we try or not? This is the question. In observing these different actions of ours, we see that, as a general principle, although man 1, 2, and 3 can do nothing, if he becomes interested in something, if he begins to want something more than ordinary things, then he is not always on the same level, and he can choose moments when he can start doing in a very elementary sense. Another very important problem that we must consider is the idea of good and evil in this system, because people's general views are very confused on this subject, and it is necessary to establish for yourself how to understand it. From the viewpoint of the system, there are only two things that can be compared or seen in man: the manifestation of mechanical laws and the manifestation of consciousness. If you want to find examples of what you can call good or bad to arrive at some standard, you will see at once that what we call evil is always mechanical. It can never be conscious. And what we call good is always conscious. It cannot be mechanical. It will take a long time to see the reason for that, because the ideas of mechanical and conscious are mixed in our minds. We never describe them in the right way, so this is the next point that you must consider and study. Further, in connection with the question of good and evil, we must try to understand the relative positions of morality and conscience. What is morality and what is conscience? We can say first of all that morality is not constant. It is different in different countries, in different centuries, in different decades, in different classes, with people of different education, etc. What may be moral in the Caucasus may be immoral in Europe. For instance, in some countries, blood revenge is the most moral thing. If a man refuses to kill somebody who killed his distant uncle, he would be considered most immoral. But in Europe, nobody would think that. In fact, most people would think a man very immoral to kill anybody, even a relative of somebody who's killed his uncle. So morality is always different, and it always changes. But conscience never changes. Conscience is a kind of emotional understanding of truth in certain definite relations, generally in relation to behavior, to people, and so on. This is always the same. It cannot change, and it cannot differ from one nation to another, in one country or another, in one person or another. Try to connect in your mind what I said about the study of good and evil, mechanicalness and consciousness, morality and conscience, and then put the question: is conscious evil possible? That will require study and observation. But from the point of view of the system, there is a definite principle that conscious evil is impossible. Mechanicalness must be unconscious. Question. The idea of evil being always unconscious is rather difficult to understand. Can you explain it a little more? Answer. I said, first of all, try to find for yourself what you call evil, not by definition, but by examples. When you have a certain number of examples, ask yourself, could they be conscious? Could evil things be done consciously? Later, you will see that they could be done only unconsciously. Another answer is that all you call evil can happen mechanically, and it always does happen mechanically, so it has no need of consciousness. I said that we should study the ideas of this system chiefly in connection with the evolution of man, and I explained by the evolution we must understand a conscious process and conscious efforts, continuous and connected. There is no mechanical evolution, as it is sometimes understood. Evolution, if it is possible, can only be conscious. And the beginning of evolution is always the evolution of consciousness. It cannot be the evolution of anything else. If consciousness, if consciousness begins to evolve, other things begin to grow and evolve. If consciousness remains on the same level, everything else remains on the same level. There are several things which it is important to understand from the very beginning in relation to evolution. First, that out of the great quantity of men, 1, 2, and 3, only very few can become 4, 5, 6, and 7, or even begin. That must be very well understood, because if we begin to think that everybody can evolve, we cease to understand the conditions necessary for the beginning of evolution, as I described them for you in the example of escape from prison. Question. Have all races of men the same possibility of development? Answer. That is an interesting question. I asked this question myself when I first came to this work, and I was told that it had been discussed in very important schools at very important periods, and that after making all possible experiments in this connection, they came to the conclusion that there is no difference from the point of view of possible development between the white, yellow, black, brown, and red races. At the present time, the white and yellow races have predominance, whereas in the past it was probably one of the others. For instance, the Sphinx reminds one of a Negro, not a European. Question. In connection with what you said about good and evil, could a follower of this system take part in a war? Answer. It is his business. There are no external prohibitions or conditions. Question. But how could he reconcile the two? Answer. Again, it is his business. This particular system leaves man very free. He wants to create consciousness and will. Neither consciousness nor will can be created by following certain external restrictions. One must be free. You must understand that external things matter least of all. It is the internal things that are important. Internal war. Question. There are many things that seem to me evil, which I am capable of committing. Answer. You cannot take yourself, because you could only take examples of evil which you have committed already. So it's better to take the idea in general. Find all possible examples. I don't mean accidents or mistakes, because many crimes are accidental, but take all that we call definite intentional evil, and you will see that it does not need consciousness. One mechanical action and everything goes on. Question. It creates the illusion of choice. Answer. That is the greatest illusion. The illusion of doing and the illusion of choice. These things belong to a higher level. Beginning at number 4, one already begins to have choice. But men 1, 2, and 3 have very little choice. Question. Wouldn't you say that the study of black magic was conscious evil? Answer. Do you know anybody who studied it, with the exception of people who read books with terrifying pictures and deceive themselves? Question. If you deliberately set to work to deceive another person, is that not deliberate evil? Answer. Most probably you could not help yourself. There was such a pressure of circumstance or something that you could not do otherwise. These are all difficult problems, and they take a long time to get used to because we are accustomed to think in the wrong way. For instance, when we look at historical events, we take as conscious just those things that cannot be conscious, and the things that may be conscious we take as mechanical, as a kind of process.